for a little girl killed while her father led deputies on a 45-minute chase all across Harris County.
DeAndre Flanagan was convicted of capital murder today after family members say he strangled his daughter while on FaceTime with her mother and grandfather during a jealous rage.
I know in her mind she probably was just wondering, like, what did I do? Like, what are you doing this to me for? Like, I love you. Like, why are you hurting me?
We saw the killer's rage on full display this afternoon outside of the courtroom in the hallway when he went after one of our photojournalists. Take a look. Luckily, photojournalist Mark Lawyer says he only jammed a finger during the defendant's outburst in the hallway of the courthouse this afternoon. Although DeAndre Flanagan's ankles were shackled by leg irons, his hands were allowed to be free during the trial so as not to prejudice the jury. Nonetheless, it took jurors...
Are you ready to hear a story that will break your heart, but also make you think deeply about how we can protect the ones we love? What would you do if you saw someone you trusted turn into a complete stranger right before your eyes? What if that person was someone who was supposed to love and care for their own child, your grandchild, your niece, or even your own baby? How far would you go to stop them if you knew something terrible was about to happen? Today, I want to take you on a journey filled with pain, anger, and questions. But it's also a journey toward hope, because while this story is tragic, it has the power to spark change, real change, the kind of change that could save lives. This isn't just any story, it's the story of Zavia, Zia for short, a bright, bubbly 2-year-old girl from Houston, Texas. She had an infectious laugh, a curious mind, and a heart so big she could light up any room she walked into. Zia loved animals, dancing, singing, and playing like most toddlers her age. To her family, she wasn't just a child. She was everything. But on March 20, 2023, Zia's life was cut tragically short in a way no one could have imagined. And what happened next shocked not only her community, but people across the country. Imagine this. A mother at work, minding her own business, when suddenly her ex-partner shows up unannounced. He's angry, unpredictable, and he's holding their 2-year-old daughter in his arms. What happens next feels like something out of a nightmare. A high-speed chase through city streets, a live-streamed FaceTime call where violence unfolds in real time, and a family watching helplessly as their worst fears come true. Doesn't that sound unbelievable? Like something that couldn't possibly happen in real life? But here's the thing, it did, and it raises some tough questions. Questions about trust, about warning signs, and about why systems designed to protect us sometimes fail. So let me ask you again, are you ready to dive deep into this story? Not because it's easy to hear, but because it's important. Because understanding what happened to Zia might help prevent another tragedy like hers from ever happening again. Let's start by going back to the beginning, to the moments leading up to that fateful day. Let's talk about Zia's family, their struggles, and the red flags that everyone wishes had been taken more seriously. By the end of this, my hope is that you won't just feel moved. You'll feel empowered to act. Because Zia deserves nothing less than our attention, our empathy, and our commitment to creating a safer world. Please support us by subscribing to this channel and clicking the notification bell icon so you don't miss any of our latest stories. Shall we begin? Let me take you back to a time when things seemed normal, at least on the surface. DeAndre Flanagan and Kirsten Watson were like so many other couples out there. Two people trying to build a life together, raising their daughter, Z. She was the light of their lives. If you've ever been around a toddler, you know how magical they are, their laughter. It's like sunshine in human form. Zia had that kind of laugh, the kind that could brighten even the darkest room. She was curious, full of energy, and loved with her whole little heart. To Kirsten and DeAndre, she wasn't just their child. She was everything. But here's the thing about families. We often see the smiles, the happy moments, the pictures posted online. What we don't always see is what's happening behind closed doors. And for Kirsten and Deontre, those doors weren't hiding happiness anymore. Over time, cracks started forming in their relationship. Trust became fragile. Accusations flew back and forth. The biggest issue, infidelity, or at least the suspicion of it. For Kirsten, staying in that relationship felt less like love and more like walking on eggshells every single day. So, she made a decision, a hard one, but one she believed was best for both her and Zia. She decided to leave. Not because she didn't care about Deontre, but because she cared too much about her own safety and her daughter's well-being. For Kirsten, this separation wasn't just an end to a marriage or partnership. It was a lifeline, a way to protect herself and her baby from Deontre's increasingly unpredictable behavior. But here's where the story takes a darker turn, because while Kirsten may have walked away, Deontre didn't let go. Not easily, anyway. In fact, as the weeks went by after their split, something inside him seemed to snap. His anger grew louder, sharper, more dangerous. He began bombarding Kirsten with messages, texts, calls, threats, all hours of the day and night. Why did you leave? Who else is there? You'll regret this. The questions came fast and furious, but no matter how many times Kirsten tried to explain, nothing satisfied him. And then there were the visits. Unannounced, unexpected, showing up wherever Kirsten was. At home, at work, anywhere he thought he might catch her off guard. Each visit left her feeling smaller, more afraid. She knew something wasn't right. Something inside Deontre had shifted, and it scared her. Now, imagine being in Kirsten's shoes. You're a mother. Your priority is your child, and suddenly the person who should be your partner, your co-parent, starts acting like someone you barely recognize. What do? Well, if you're Kirsten, you reach out for help. You call the authorities. You tell them what's happening. You warn them about the threats, the erratic behavior, the fear that wakes you up in the middle of the night. But here's the heartbreaking part. No one listened. Deontre had a history, violent outbursts, property damage, a pattern of behavior that screamed danger. But despite all of Kirsten's warnings, despite her pleas, the system failed her. Time and again, she says, I told them over and over that something was going to happen, but nothing changed. No intervention, no protection, just silence. Looking back now, those words feel like a prophecy, a chilling warning of what was to come, because when systems fail, when voices aren't heard, tragedies happen. And in this case, the tragedy would shake not only Kirsten's world, but an entire community. So I have to ask, how many times does someone have to say, I'm scared before action is taken? Let's pause for a moment and think about this. How many of us start our days thinking, today might be the day my life changes forever? Probably not many. Most of us wake up, go through our routines, and assume the day will unfold like any other. For Kirsten Watson, March 20, 2023 started just like that. Ordinary. She went to work at her job at Walmart, focused on her responsibilities, and tried to keep things as normal as possible. But by midday, everything she thought she knew about safety, trust, and control was shattered. Here's what happened. Deontre Flanagan, Zia's father, showed up unannounced at Kirsten's workplace. Now, let's break this down for a second. Imagine you're at work, doing your job, when suddenly someone who has been making threats against you walks in. Not just anyone. Your ex-partner, the person who should have been a co-parent, a protector. And he's not alone. He's holding your 2-year-old daughter, Zia, in his arms. But here's the kicker. Deontre had picked Zia up from daycare without permission. That's a red flag right there, isn't it? A clear violation of their agreement. Witnesses later described the scene as chilling. Deontra didn't just walk in casually. He stormed in, carrying an air of determination and anger that made everyone uneasy. He confronted Kirsten in front of her colleagues, accusing her of infidelity. His words were sharp, laced with rage. Kirsten's co-workers watched in stunned silence as the situation escalated. Deontra wasn't just upset. He was out of control. He demanded Kirsten's phone and insisted she hand over her passcode. When she hesitated, because, let's be honest, who wouldn't? Can you picture that moment? The fear in Kirsten's eyes, the shock on her co-workers' faces. It's the kind of scene that feels surreal, like something out of a movie. But this wasn't fiction. This was real life. And as the tension reached its peak, Deontra did the unthinkable. He snatched Zia, his own daughter, and stormed out of the building. Kirsten's co-workers immediately called the police, but by then it was too late. Deontra and Zia were already gone. Kirsten was left standing there, her face bruised, her heart racing. She knew deep down that her daughter's life was now in danger, and she was powerless to stop it. So, I have to ask, what would you do if you were in Kirsten's shoes? How do you keep going when the person you trusted with your child becomes the very threat you feared most? Now, let's talk about what happened next. Because what followed was nothing short of chaos. A high-speed chase through Houston's streets that felt like something out of an action movie. Except this wasn't entertainment. This was real life. Deontra, with Zia unrestrained in the passenger seat, led police on a pursuit that spanned 30 miles. Let that sink in for a moment. 30 miles. With a 2-year-old child in the car. No seatbelt. No car seat. Just a little girl sitting beside a man who was driving recklessly, weaving between cars, running red lights and narrowly avoiding collisions. Witnesses along the route reported seeing his red SUV swerving dangerously, as if the world around him didn't exist. Officers described his driving as reckless, showing no regard for the safety of his own daughter or anyone else on the road. Can you imagine the terror Zia must have felt? The confusion, the fear. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. During the chase, Deontra used Facetime to call Kirsten. Yes, you heard that right. He streamed his actions, forcing Kirsten and her father, Curtis Watson, to watch in real time as he harmed their precious Zia. Through her tears, Kirsten begged him to stop. Please don't hurt her, she pleaded. She's just a baby. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Curtis, struggling to maintain composure, tried to reason with Deontra. You don't have to do this, he urged. Think about your daughter. But Deontra wasn't listening. Instead, he began to physically assault Zia right there on the video call. Prosecutors would later reveal chilling screenshots from the FaceTime call, showing Zia's injuries as they unfolded. Every second stretched into an eternity as Kirsten and Curtis watched, powerless to intervene. Imagine being in their position, watching your child, your grandchild, suffer at the hands of someone who should have protected her. How do you process that? How do you even begin to comprehend the horror of it all? The chase finally came to an end, near St. Dunstan's Episcopal Church, where Deontra crashed his vehicle into others on the road. By this point, SWAT teams had surrounded the scene, and the air was thick with tension. Deontra refused to surrender immediately, initiating a standoff that left officers on edge. When he was finally taken into custody, the sight inside the car was devastating. Zia was found unresponsive and gravely injured. Emergency responders rushed her to Memorial, Hermann Hospital, by helicopter, but the damage had already been done. Despite the efforts of medical professionals, Zia was pronounced dead shortly after her arrival. Her tiny body could no longer sustain the fight for life. So, I have to ask again, how does a system designed to protect us fail so catastrophically? And what can we do to ensure that no family ever has to endure what Kristen and her loved ones went through? Let's take a moment to pause and reflect. What happens after the chaos ends, after the sirens stop blaring, the cameras turn off, and the world moves on? For Kristen Watson, the aftermath of that fateful day wasn't just about grieving the loss of her daughter. It was about grappling with questions that may never have answers. When the medical examiner confirmed Zia's cause of death, blunt force trauma and asphyxiation, the reality of what happened hit like a second blow. The report painted a grim picture of the violence Zia endured in her final moments. It wasn't just an accident or a tragic twist of fate. It was a deliberate act of brutality. For Kristen, reading those words felt like reliving the nightmare all over again. "I don't understand how someone could do this to their own child," she said later, her voice breaking under the weight of her grief. But here's the thing about grief. It doesn't exist in isolation. It ripples outward, touching everyone who knew and loved Zia. Her grandfather, Curtis Watson, described the pain as something he carries with him every single day. "She was my sunshine," he said. "Every time I see her picture, hear her laugh in my memories, it feels like a knife in my heart." And then there's the community. Zia's death didn't just devastate her family. It sent shockwaves through Houston and beyond. People who had never met her felt the weight of her story. How could they not? A 2-year-old girl, full of life and love, taken in such a violent way. It's the kind of tragedy that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our society, our systems, and ourselves. In the days following Zia's death, questions began to emerge, not just about Deontra Flanagan's actions, but about the system that failed to protect her. Kristen revealed that she had repeatedly reached out to law enforcement, warning them about Deontra's escalating threats. "He sent me messages saying he would hurt me and take our daughter," she explained. "I went to the police, but they didn't do anything. They said there wasn't enough evidence." Kristen wasn't the only one who saw the warning signs. Friends and family had also expressed concerns about Deontra's erratic behavior and history of violence. His criminal record, which included assault and property damage, should have raised red flags. Yet despite multiple reports, no action was taken to protect Kristen or Zia. Advocacy groups have since pointed to this case as an example of systemic failure. Experts in domestic violence prevention argue that Kristen's warnings should have been taken more seriously. "When someone says they're in danger, we have to believe them," one advocate said. Too often, these cases end in tragedy because the system doesn't act in time. The lack of intervention has sparked a broader conversation about the gaps in the justice system. Why weren't Deontra's threats enough to warrant immediate action? What protocols need to be in place to protect children in situations like this? For Kristen, these questions feel like a cruel reminder of what could have been prevented. "I told them something was going to happen," she said tearfully. "They thought I was overreacting, but now my baby is gone." The aftermath of Zia's death has left a legacy of grief and anger. It's a stark reminder that warnings cannot be ignored and that lives depend on swift, decisive action. Advocacy groups continue to push for reform, vowing to ensure that no other family has to endure what the Watsons have faced. In the wake of Zia's death, the Houston community came together to honor her memory. Vigils were held, candles were lit, and white balloons were released into the sky, each one representing a child lost to violence. At one such vigil near the site of the crash, dozens gathered to pay their respects. Attendees spoke of Zia's bright spirit and the joy she brought to those around her. "She was just a baby," one neighbor said, tears streaming down her face. "She had her whole life ahead of her. It's heartbreaking to think about what she'll never get to experience." The Watson family also held a memorial service for Zia. inviting friends, neighbors, and members of the community to celebrate her life. A small table was adorned with her favorite toys, a framed photo of her infectious smile at the center. "We don't want her to be remembered for what happened to her," Kirsten said. "We want her to be remembered for the joy she brought into this world." The service ended with letters written by family members read aloud through tears. One letter from Kirsten read, "Zia, you were my world. You were taken from me far too soon, but I promise to carry your memory in my heart every single day. I love you, my baby, forever and always." Zia's death has sparked outrage, not just within her community, but across the nation. Advocacy groups have rallied around her story, calling for systemic reforms to prevent similar tragedies. Domestic violence prevention organizations have highlighted the failures that led to this devastating outcome. "This was preventable," one advocate said. "When someone like Kirsten comes forward with credible threats and concerns, the system needs to act immediately. We can't afford to let warnings slip through the cracks." The case has also reignited conversations about improving child protection protocols. Experts argue that more robust systems are needed to identify and respond to threats, particularly in cases involving custody disputes and histories of abuse. Community members have come together to honor Zia's memory through vigils and awareness campaigns. In Houston, a candlelight vigil was held near the site of the crash, with dozens gathering to pay their respects. Attendees held candles and released white balloons into the sky, each one representing a child lost to violence. Kirsten has since joined forces with advocacy groups to push for change. She has become a vocal advocate for domestic violence awareness, sharing her story to help others recognize the signs of danger and seek help before it's too late. "I want people to know what happened to Zia, not to dwell on the pain, but to understand how important it is to act when someone is in danger," Kirsten said. "Her life mattered, her story matters, and if sharing it can save even one life, then her memory will live on in the most meaningful way." Here's my question to you. What will it take for us to create a world where stories like Zia's no longer exist? How do we ensure that warning signs are heard, that systems respond swiftly, and that no child is ever weaponized in the way Zia was? Because the truth is, this isn't just Kirsten's fight. It's all of ours. Every voice matters. Every action counts. Together, we can build a safer, brighter future for the next generation. What will you do to help make that happen? If you found this story impactful and want to ensure you don't miss any of our important updates, please consider subscribing to our channel. Hit the notification bell icon so you'll be alerted every time we release a new video. Together, we can raise awareness, spark change, and honor stories like Zia's by turning tragedy into action. Thank you for your support. It truly makes a difference.